Hello, welcome to Free Eurasia Media. We continue to discuss the Ukrainian war and its implications on its neighbors. This time we're going to discuss and focus on the war's implication on the Republic of Georgia. Today's guest is Kakhaber Kemoklidze. Kakhaber, thank you for your joining. Given his educational and background and practical experience in conflict management, Kakhaber specializes in conflict analysis and Russian studies. His experience of working in various analytical departments as a Minister of Internal Affairs and Minister of State Security Service, Kakhaber is currently one of the best intelligence analysts in Georgia. Over the past 10 years, he has had a career in security and intelligence and has worked in numerous senior positions within the security apparatus in different ministries, services in Georgia. For nearly 8 years, spanning over 2 different governments, Kakhaber was a chief negotiator at the Incident Prevention and Response Mechanism, both in Tskhinvali and South Ossetia, Abkhazia. Kakhaber, we're going to talk about again different topics related to Ukraine war. I know Georgia is also suffers from the occupation. Its lands, if I'm not mistaken, 2 lands were occupied by Russia and separatists there, supported by Russian dictatorship. So we want first focus or talk about how the Ukraine war is seen from Tbilisi, Georgia, and what impacts on the war in Georgia's internal and external affairs. Floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Rafik. Let me greet to the audience at the same time. Well, I would start from the very beginning. Ukraine as a country was and is, and I guess will be extremely close to Georgia. It was a strategic partner. It was helping us, assisting us in the conflicts in 1990s, especially in Abkhazian direction. We remember how they have been supporting us from the 1990s. We remember how they have been helping us in the conflict against Russia in 2008. And we really are very close to this nation. And of course, what is happening right now, the war, which was absolutely non-provoked war, which was launched by Russian Federation, it is a kind of reminder to us how we have been suffering for many years from the north at the same time. However, looking on the facts from the very kind of geopolitical perspective, whatever's going to be the outcome, what's going to be the outcome of the Russia-Ukraine war will directly and indirectly affect the future of Georgia at the same time. Why? Because of geopolitics, because of the Black Sea, because of the Russia itself, Russian Federation, because Russian Federation wants to influence, let's say, Georgia's internal and external politics. We remember the developments of 2014. For example, to give you the context, there are several thoughts, even in Georgia, different, let's say, in different political spectrums, in analytical circles, in some non-governmental organizations, that what if we give up our, let's say, NATO aspiration? Will Georgia be safer? And here is a very stainless steel argument, counter-argument, in fact. And this argument relies on the developments of 2014, because in 2014, in Ukraine itself did not have any ambition to become the NATO member state. However, Crimea was still seized, and the 8-year prolonged war has been still launched by Russian Federation. And this argument, in my understanding, gives a very clear answer from the Georgian perspective that we really intend to become the member of the NATO and especially the European Union. And I think this is the strategic itinerary of Georgia. as well as this became the strategic itinerary of Ukraine and Moldova at the same time, because we want to take out ourselves from the purely, let's say, geographically South Caucasian context and reinstall ourselves in the context of the wider Black Sea. And in the wider Black Sea, in my understanding, Ukraine is going to be a big player in the north, and we have an ambition that we should be one of the biggest players in the east flank of the Black Sea. And in my understanding, Georgia can reach this goal if the Ukraine, let's say, manages to go through and free its occupied lands by Russian Federation within the next months, hopefully. And I think this outcome will make us actually elaborate, make us reach our strategic goals and objectives even faster, even quicker than it was expected even several years ago. Because war in Ukraine opened the geopolitical opportunity, geopolitical window. Ukrainians are suffering by their own nation's blood. However, Georgia is definitely, or should be definitely, keen to use this particular geopolitical opportunity in their interests. Because one, we did not manage to use it in the early 1990s. In fact, we suffered a lot after it because of our own mistakes, by the way. And we should not allow ourselves to do the same. We should use this one, and we should install ourselves on a safe side of the bank where the normal civilized societies are peacefully working with each other and trading with each other, establishing new economic relationships, and generally developing in a normal civilized manner.
Thank you, Kakhaber. Thank you for these points. I know that there's the governments comes and go, but sometimes the attitude doesn't change. But can you tell us about how current Georgian government, how they look at this the conflict? I mean, the war, Ukraine war. What is the scope of their support to Ukrainian government, Zelensky? Do you see that it's not enough? Do you think that they should do more? Or can you tell us more about it?
Yes, I can. Generally speaking, to be honest, absolutely. I try not to largely criticize the Georgian government in front of international media because of one very simple reason. Because at the end of the day, my country, my state's interests suffer because of them, because of their mistakes, and etc., and etc. But in a general context, I would absolutely freely share that I think they do not realize very well what sort of geopolitical opportunity is right in front of us, put at the table, because of this unbelievably crazy, sorry for my French, war, what was launched by Russian Federation, which was unbelievable because no one on earth from the civilized world could actually imagine that one could actually allow themselves to launch such serious geopolitical provocation almost in the middle of the Europe. And this is the reason why I think that they don't realize very well what we might lose. They don't realize or strategically analyze, let's say, what sort of opportunities are coming up, despite the fact that European Union, for example, absolutely out of sky at some point, opened the possibility of the full-scale membership with clear itinerary in the near future at the same time. They don't realize what it means for the nation, what it means for my generation, my parent generation, older generation, or my kids' generation. What we have been dreaming from the 1990s, those dreams might come true if we really well manage to use these opportunities. And I don't have an impression that they realize those developments. And the answer, when I ask myself, how comes that they do not, or are not, or will not want to use this geopolitical opportunity, the answer is simple. They just want to keep themselves in power. They want to be comfortable taking in consideration their own context. They think about tomorrow and the day after tomorrow, and they only think about the next elections. But as a real statesman or stateswoman, they don't think about the next generations. They don't think about the next decades. They don't think strategically where we should be or we can be, practically speaking, with the next 15, 20 years, 25 years, how our lives will change after it. And we have such a good examples at the same time. Look at the Baltic states, look at Poland, look at Romania, look at Bulgaria, look at Czech Republic and other small states who have been under the Soviet occupation, like us, for many, many decades at the same time. And this is the reason why I'm so skeptical about the current Georgian government, because they just think about their own future, their own family members' future. And I think this is one of the biggest mistakes, actually, what the politicians can make, because this is not the understanding of the statesman or stateswoman. This is very selfish, very narrow internal political context, so-called party political context, which they live in, and they want the entire Georgian nation, Georgian society, to live in the next couple of decades. But I'm sure this won't happen. I largely believe that the Georgian society is wise. They think strategically. They have seen good, bad, and worse. And I think that the political demagogy, political populism, the irrational fear what the Georgian government was trying to install in every single mindset because of this unbelievable propaganda and unbelievable fake news and disinformation campaigns, what we have been fighting for, against, actually, even during my 10 years tenure in the security and intelligence business. What we have been fighting against right now, the Georgian government is using against its own nation and against its own strategic interests. I think that's a very simplistic, however, extremely in-depth, let's say, look on the Georgia's internal and external standing right now.
Thank you, Kakhaber, to explain about your government's current the problem that exists in the current government. But Kakhaber, let's switch to the war, the Ukraine war. I know there's Georgian fighters are fighting, and also the Ukrainian counteroffensive is coming. Everybody's hopeful about it. Can you tell us the role of Georgian fighters? There's a lot of information about it. Sometimes the news comes that Georgian fighter was killed in action. And can you tell us more about these battalions? Thank you.
Well, thank you for this extremely interesting question, and it is extremely sensitive at the same time because of my background. I'm coming from the military family who suffered a lot in 1990s conflicts. And at the same time, because of my security background, I had a very close professional cooperation with many, many men and women, extremely brave and smart and patriotic men and women who have been fighting for the state interest of Georgia in multiple directions, in many, many battlefields. And they sacrifice so much at the same time. And going back actually to your question, a biggest portion of these people are having the same background. They have been the soldiers under the Ministry of Defense, under the commands structures of Georgia for many, many years. And because of the reasons that many of them could not just stay quiet in Georgia, because their hearts have been with the hearts of Ukrainians in this extremely unfearful war launched by Russian Federation, That was the key motivation for them to leave the country and go and join the battlefields, to join their colleagues from Ukraine and directly head to the battlefield and sacrifice their own lives. If I'm not mistaken, 43 or 44 Georgian fighters, Georgian soldiers have been killed in this war, and by proportion of the population, this is almost the biggest, let's say, sacrifice by the country. And this particular statistics at some point explains the key motivation of these people. It's not about money. It's not about some other possible benefits, what they might get. It's about their soul-hearted love of the freedom and love of Ukraine as the key strategic ally and friend, historic friend of Georgia. And this is the key motivation why these people generally go and fight against the common enemy. You asked about the structures of these units. There are several units, as far as I have looked on them from the open sources. But what is common again and again for all four or all five is the love to freedom and love for Georgia and Ukraine, because fighting against Russia, they believe, and we all believe, that it is fighting against your common enemy, the same enemy which actually occupies 20% of your land, which tries to artificially split the societies by the barbed wires, which tries to detain, to torture, and to kill your own people, which tries to split the orchards and the families, living in peace, by the way, for many, many decades. And I think this is one of the reasons why these people feel so close the developments of Ukraine and why these people actually went there to fight against a common enemy.
Thank you so much. I definitely they have a good motives to fight there. Hopefully, they will play an important role in around Bakhmut. I know that they're fighting Bakhmut and other parts of Ukraine. So my next question, Kakhaber, is if the Ukraine wins, what will Georgia do? Namely, what steps will the current and future governments will take to restore its territorial integrity and sovereignty?
Such a good question. Let's start from the beginning. I would say I do hope that there won't be any ifs about Ukraine. Ukraine should win, and I'm sure they will win. They become the part of free society, civilized, well-developed European society, and this is the intention what Georgians and Georgia has at the same time. With regard to the second and extremely important part of your question, I can say what we won't do, what we will not do when Ukraine will. We will not regain our effective control on the territories of Abkhazia and Tskhinvali region, South Ossetia, by military means. We will not do that. And the answer is very simple. By both governments back in 2010 and in 2013, by the newly come government, there were legally binding pledges made by both governments that in any case, Georgia will never ever use the force to regain or reestablish its territorial integrity and sovereignty by force. We will not have this intention anymore because we believe in peace and the let's say reintegration of the territories and the society, especially in living in occupied regions, will happen only in peace. And I think the formula here of success is also very simple. We have particular, let's say, strategic advantages, as the people like to use in economic terms. What are those? This is the fact that we can be a beacon of democracy, beacon of reforms, beacon of extremely civilized, freedom-loved society in the middle of the Caucasus. This is one. Second, we already have the visa liberalization, DCFTA, deep and comprehensive free trade agreement with the European Union. We have the many free trade agreements with different states and regional or global actors, including China. So we can actually economically become extremely serious economic hub within the region. And at the same time, became extremely, let's say, a good magnet for the others, including for the societies living in occupied regions. This is two. And three, we have, after Russia-Ukraine war, we have an obvious, a very realistic, pragmatically very realistic chance to become the EU member, not on like a 15, 20, 25 years perspective, but in a really very close vicinity, which means that you're going to have a European Union member country in the middle of the Caucasus, which means that you're going to have a lot of European investments in the middle of the Caucasus, taking in consideration that you have to be a beacon of democracy at the same time and beacon of reforms. And I have been myself in practice witnessing how Abkhazians and Ossetians living in Tskhinvali region, South Ossetia, have been curious about the reforms, unbelievable reforms installed in Georgia. The police reform, for example, the good governance reform, when we eradicated all those bureaucratic mechanisms and etc. and etc. When the economy became extremely simplistic, when the doing business index became very high and very well managed in Georgia, and taking in consideration all those different colors put in one big picture, we are absolutely sure that in peace, in economy, through economic development, through different, let's say, instruments, which will well manage to make the Ossetian and Abkhazian societies be interested in Georgia from many angles, will make this technically possible. And I'm sure that one day it will happen.
Kakhaber, thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts. Again, today's guest is Kakhaber Kemoklidze. Appreciate your time. Thank you so much. We end the conversation.